Beneath the vast, silent canvas of space, humanity had always viewed itself as fragile, a species at the mercy of cosmic forces far greater than themselves. But what if the truth was something far more unsettling? What if the moment the universe saw humans not as prey, but as predators, changed everything? This is the story of the day the aliens realized humans weren't weak. They were something far more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. In the quiet expanse of space, humanity had long wondered if they were alone. For centuries, Earth's inhabitants gazed toward the stars, yearning for answers, but mostly uncertain of what lay beyond. The cosmos stretched infinitely, a silent testament to their isolation. Stories of distant worlds and alien civilizations filled their myths and dreams, but none had returned with proof. The stars were distant, untouchable, vast beyond comprehension. Humanity lived with the lingering belief that they were small and insignificant in this endless void. The idea of being watched by something beyond their understanding was not a comforting thought. Generations had passed, and Earth had seen its share of conflicts, wars fought for resources, power, and survival. From the dawn of civilization, humans had been defined by their struggle to endure. They had always perceived themselves as prey, vulnerable and easily consumed by the unknown forces of the universe. The fragile creatures of Earth had survived only by clinging to their home planet, bound by fear of what lay beyond their atmosphere. Yet beneath that fragile exterior, humanity had always carried an unspoken hope. The idea that they were meant for something greater than mere survival, that beyond their limitations, they might find purpose among the stars. It was this hope that drove explorers to venture into the unknown, to build rockets and telescopes, and to seek answers in the depths of space. They had long imagined what it might be like to encounter life beyond Earth, to make contact with other civilizations. But if life existed out there, they feared what they might discover. The stars were vast and filled with danger. The thought of being watched, of potentially becoming a victim of some cosmic predator, was never far from their minds. The question of whether humanity could stand against such forces loomed like a shadow over their dreams of interstellar exploration. For centuries, Earth had remained in silence. They had seen no sign of intelligent life. The vastness of space seemed to be empty, a quiet void where no one watched, no one listened, no one cared. It wasn't until long after humanity had settled their differences, after the great wars and struggles had given way to fragile peace, that the first signal arrived. It came in the form of a weak, encrypted radio burst, drifting silently through the void. At first, it was dismissed just another fleeting noise in the endless hum of space. Scientists combed through the signals they'd long since stopped expecting, searching for patterns that had yet to appear. But this time, there was something different. The signal carried coordinates. Coordinates that didn't seem random, but deliberate. There was intent behind it, something calculated, something aware. At first, humanity assumed the worst. They believed they were being tracked by an ancient, dormant alien force. The notion of contact, if it were ever to happen, was viewed with dread. They had always envisioned themselves as prey in this cosmic theater, fragile beings waiting for a predator to reveal itself from the shadows. Yet, as the signal persisted, something began to shift. There was no sign of aggression, no call to arms. Instead, the signal remained steady, calm, measured, and insistent. It wasn't a warning or a threat, but an invitation. An invitation to what? Humanity could not fathom the purpose behind it, and so they did what they always did when faced with the unknown. They hoped. They hoped this wasn't the beginning of a nightmare they had always expected, but rather the promise of something new. In that moment, humanity was faced with a choice: to embrace the unknown or shrink back into the safety of their fragile existence. What they didn't realize as the silence of space stretched before them was that everything was about to change. The first signal had been deciphered, but decoding was only the beginning. What followed was a frenzy of activity. Military installations, research centers, and government agencies all converged on the task. The signal wasn't a static burst of noise, it was a series of complex codes, unintelligible at first glance but undeniably intentional. There were coordinates embedded within, leading to a distant point in the Perseus arm of the Milky Way galaxy. At first there was widespread disbelief. Scientists and experts questioned the authenticity of the signal. Was it natural interference from space itself, a byproduct of some cosmic event they hadn't yet identified? Or had Earth, in its silence, finally received the answer to the age-old question: were they truly alone? The more the data was analyzed, the more convinced they became that the signal was genuine. It wasn't a fluke. It wasn't static or noise. It was purposeful, designed to be understood. For the first time in history, humanity had received a message that could not be ignored. And as the signal's origin became more precise, panic began to spread, fear mixed with anticipation. What could be out there waiting for them? In response, Earth's leaders convened at an unprecedented gathering. Military officials, political leaders, scientists, and experts from every field converged to discuss the implications of this discovery. Was this first contact? If so, what kind of civilization had sent the signal? Were they friendly or hostile? Humanity had long prepared for the former, imagining the possibilities of distant beings reaching out in peace. But the reality of their own vulnerability had always lingered just beneath that dream. Over the coming weeks, Earth's attention became laser-focused on the coordinates provided by the signal. Every available resource was poured into tracking the source. Satellites scanned the sky, telescopes were calibrated, and probes were sent in all directions, tracing the signal back to its origin. A sense of urgency grew as the destination became clearer, a region of space they had long considered the outer limits of their reach. Then, the day came when the first alien vessel appeared. It wasn't like anything humanity had ever seen before. If they had expected something monstrous, terrifying, or aggressive, they were immediately proven wrong. The ship that emerged from the distant void was elegant, sleek, and entirely unlike the destructive war machines of their own past. It moved gracefully through the dark expanse of space, its surface reflecting distant starlight in mesmerizing waves. What struck humanity most, however, wasn't the ship itself, but its lack of aggression. There was no rush of blaring alarms, no grand show of power, no demands for submission. Instead, the alien vessel hovered quietly, its presence measured, its intentions unclear. For those who watched, it was as though they had stepped into a dream, a waking nightmare perhaps, but not one rooted in violence or conquest. Earth's response was immediate but cautious. They scrambled fighters, brought defense systems online, and readied for the worst. They were conditioned to see themselves as prey. The history of Earth was a history of survival against forces far greater than they could comprehend. They had always envisioned the stars as filled with predators, beings far more powerful than themselves. And now, here one was, lurking on the edge of their world, watching. But the ship did not attack. It did not demand. It only waited, and so did humanity. The tension was suffocating, and yet there was no clear enemy to confront. In that void of silence, humanity was left wondering, was this truly contact? Or was it a trap? And if they were no longer the hunted, who did that make them? The silence between humanity and the alien vessel stretched on. It hovered near the edge of Earth's orbit, neither advancing nor retreating. To those observing, it felt as though time itself had paused. Humanity, so accustomed to interpreting the unknown as a threat, was now forced to confront something far more disorienting: presence without aggression. For days, the alien ship remained stationary, emitting no signals, no demands. The scientists analyzed every detail, studying its design, its aerials, and its energy output. They discovered that the vessel emitted no harmful emissions, no radio waves or dangerous radiation. It seemed to exist in a state of pure observation. The military watched with a growing sense of unease. If the ship was here to attack, why wasn't it attacking? The unknown became unbearable, more terrifying than any potential violence. Diplomats, meanwhile, proposed that Earth make contact. There was no precedent for this. In humanity's long history of fear and caution, no one had ever believed first contact would come without a demand. There were protocols, treaties, protocols for how to handle alien encounters, but they all revolved around the assumption that any extraterrestrial life would be either hostile or indifferent. No one had anticipated an encounter like this one, where there was no clear enemy, no clear threat. The military, however, held back. The alien ship had no visible weaponry, no signs of aggression. But humanity had long learned the hard lessons of caution. Centuries of conflict had bred skepticism. The belief that any encounter with an advanced civilization would end in subjugation or annihilation was deep-seated. Even as the diplomats and scientists proposed a greeting, the military maintained its watchful stance, wary of the unknown. Then, after what felt like an eternity, the ship moved slowly, deliberately. Its movements were not erratic or defensive, but purposeful. It adjusted its position, aligning itself closer to Earth's orbit. Humanity braced for what might come, but still there was no attack, no demand, only silence. It was then that Earth's leaders decided to send a signal of their own. A message, faint but deliberate, was transmitted toward the alien vessel. It wasn't a threat, nor was it a plea. It was an inquiry, simple, direct, and devoid of any expectation. Humanity, for the first time, had no idea how to begin. They lacked the context, the language, or the understanding of what the alien might want. What followed next was a response. Not immediate, not through radio waves, but in a form no one expected. The alien ship emitted a stream of light, not harsh or aggressive, but steady and rhythmic. The light didn't carry sound or words, it was something different entirely. A visual message sent in patterns that human eyes couldn't immediately comprehend. The ship seemed to communicate in ways that defied their understanding of what contact should be. The humans observed, trying to decode the meaning of these patterns. Days passed as they studied the transmissions, deciphering what was sent. Gradually, they realized that the message wasn't about conquest or domination, it was something far more profound. The aliens weren't here to take or destroy, they weren't seeking to impose. Instead, they seemed curious, intrigued by humanity's very existence. The realization sent shockwaves through the minds of those watching. Humanity, long viewed as insignificant and vulnerable, was now faced with the unsettling truth: the aliens did not see them as prey. They saw potential. The once shared fear of cosmic predators had dissolved, replaced by a new question: if humanity wasn't the hunted, what did that make them? And how would they respond to such an overwhelming shift in perception? The more humanity learned about the aliens, the more unsettling the truth became. At first, they had clung to the hope that this encounter might lead to peaceful collaboration and opportunity to bridge the gap between species. But as days turned into weeks, the nature of their relationship began to shift, and the true scope of what the aliens had come for became terrifyingly clear. The humans, now the subjects of extensive observation, found their biology, their history, and even their culture laid bare. The aliens conducted invasive studies, although no harm was ever inflicted, and gathered an unsettling amount of data. They examined humanity's strengths and weaknesses, dissecting the intricacies of their survival, their aggression, and their resilience. The research they gathered was not focused on Earth's wonders, its achievements, or its beauty. Instead, they seemed to have fixated on one fundamental aspect of humanity: their capacity for violence. What the aliens had seen in Earth's past wasn't merely a species struggling to survive. It was one that had survived at all costs. Humanity had thrived through conflict, adaptation, and aggression. From their earliest history, they had fought for territory, resources, and power. Their technology, though primitive compared to the advanced aliens, had been forged in the crucible of war. Their greatest achievements had been built on a foundation of struggle. It was not just the physical wars that had defined humanity, it was their psychology. Humanity had always lived in a constant state of fear and aggression, their need to protect and dominate evident in everything they did. It was not merely survival that had driven them, but the desire to prevail, sometimes at the cost of others. The aliens, in their infinite curiosity, had observed this deeply ingrained pattern and drawn their conclusions. To the aliens, humanity was not a species that merely existed, but one that thrived through competition, violence, and domination. They saw humans not as innocent creatures aching out an existence on a fragile planet, but as beings capable of something far more dangerous: conquest. The reports from the alien probes and vessels confirmed what they had suspected. Humanity was not the simple, primitive species they had assumed. No, they had evolved into something more, something dangerous. The aliens had cataloged humanity's wars, their conquests, their scientific advancements, and their relentless pursuit of survival at any cost. They had studied humanity's history of dominance over their own kind and their fragile home world. It became clear that the aliens had not come merely to learn. They had come to observe. They had analyzed humanity's past, its present, and its potential future, and what they had discovered unsettled them far more than they had anticipated. The alien civilizations had long perceived themselves as rulers of vast domains, each governed by codes of morality and respect for other life forms. They had seen themselves as peaceful stewards of their knowledge, advancing only when necessary and only to ensure the survival of their species. But humanity's capacity for destruction and dominance was something they had not anticipated. It was this fundamental trait that they had begun to fear. The fear wasn't of Earth's survival or its technological potential, but of what humanity could become. The aliens had long believed themselves to be protectors of the cosmos, responsible for maintaining balance. But if humanity was capable of such aggression, such unchecked power, they began to question whether they could remain impartial. Could they coexist with a species that thrived on dominance, or would they need to intervene? The aliens, once fascinated by humanity's survival and resilience, now saw them not as allies, but as threats. Their earlier curiosity had shifted to a growing caution. They no longer studied humanity to understand, but to assess the potential danger they posed to the universe. The message was clear to Earth. They were no longer viewed as prey, but as something far more dangerous, something capable of rising to a power that even the most advanced civilizations feared. As the weeks turned into months, the reports from Earth grew more troubling. The aliens, once observers, had shifted from curiosity to caution. Their studies of humanity had painted a far more disturbing picture than anyone had anticipated. Humans were no longer seen as the fragile, insignificant species they had long believed themselves to be. The evidence gathered from Earth's history, its endless conflicts, conquests, and relentless pursuit of dominance had been cataloged and assessed. Now, the aliens viewed humanity as something far more dangerous. The response from the alien civilizations was not immediate, but their growing silence was deafening. They had once maintained a presence, observing from the shadows of space. Now they seemed to withdraw, retreating from the edges of Earth's awareness. This wasn't a sign of fear or aggression, it was something far more unsettling. It was the silence of those who had realized they might have made a mistake. Humanity was no longer perceived as prey, but as something far more formidable, a predator capable of turning their survival instincts into something far more dangerous. The fear among Earth's leaders deepened. The knowledge that the aliens viewed humanity with caution, if not outright dread, sent shockwaves through governments, militaries, and scientific communities alike. They had always assumed that their destiny was tied to exploration, growth, and peaceful coexistence. Now they were faced with the terrifying realization that the very qualities that had allowed them to survive aggression, adaptability, and resilience might be perceived as something far more threatening by beings far more advanced than themselves. In response, humanity scrambled for answers. Why had the aliens come? What did they want? Were they preparing for something? The fear that had once been confined to the imaginations of philosophers and scientists now became an undeniable reality. The very nature of humanity, which had long been shaped by conflict, was now under the scrutiny of beings who had no intention of protecting or nurturing. Instead, they viewed humans as a potential force of destruction, a race that, if left unchecked, could disrupt the delicate balance of the galaxy. The alien silence became oppressive. They had withdrawn, but they hadn't disappeared. Probes, unmanned vessels, and distant signals continued to monitor Earth from afar. Humanity knew they were still being watched, but with no response from the alien ships, it became increasingly difficult to understand their true intentions. Were they waiting to strike, or had they decided that humanity was too dangerous to deal with at all? The experts debated endlessly. Some argued that the aliens would soon return, demanding submission or confrontation. Others believed that the silence was a sign of fear that humanity might one day rise to levels of power the aliens could not control. Still, there were those who clung to hope, holding on to the possibility that this encounter might still lead to some form of communication, some peaceful understanding. But deep down, many knew that the era of innocence had passed. Humanity, once content in its isolation, now faced the reality that it was no longer alone, and that the galaxy might no longer view it as weak or insignificant. The aliens had left them with a question that echoed through every corner of Earth. What happens when humanity realizes it isn't the prey? How far would they go to survive when they saw themselves as predators? The silence stretched on for months, growing more oppressive with each passing day. Earth, once focused on exploration and survival, now found itself trapped in a state of cautious waiting. The alien vessels had vanished from view, retreating into the depths of space, yet their presence still loomed large. Humanity was left in a state of uneasy uncertainty, unable to determine whether the aliens had truly left or were merely observing from the shadows. Reports continued to pour in from all corners of the globe, both from military bases and research facilities. The aliens had left no indication of their intentions, no messages of peace or war, only a void of silence. The longer they remained absent, the more humanity began to fear that the real threat was not imminent attack, but the prospect of living with the unknown. What had once seemed like a distant and unlikely encounter had become a reality that was too close to ignore. Earth's leaders convened in secret meetings, debating the best course of action. Should they send more signals, trying to draw the aliens back into communication? Or should they wait, assuming that any attempt to provoke interaction might only escalate matters. No one could agree on the right path forward. Meanwhile, speculation grew rampant among the public. Conspiracy theories flourished, fueled by the growing sense of unease. Rumors of alien invasions, hidden government cover-ups, and secret organizations searching for answers spread like wildfire. The idea that the aliens had deemed humanity too dangerous to engage only deepened the fear that they had awakened something far more powerful than they could control. Within the military, tensions reached a breaking point. Generals and commanders debated whether humanity should prepare for conflict. Though the alien ships had shown no sign of aggression, there was a fear that their silence was merely a prelude to something far more sinister. The history of Earth was one of conquest and dominance, and it was this very history that now haunted them. If the aliens truly saw humans as predators, then what might they do to ensure that humanity remained contained or subdued? In the halls of power, some leaders proposed bold action. They believed that humanity should not wait idly for the return of the aliens. Instead, they argued, they should prepare for the worst. A preemptive strike, while dangerous, might be their only hope of survival. After all, if the aliens saw humanity as a threat, wasn't it better to confront them now rather than face annihilation later? The thought of acting without fully understanding their motives was terrifying, but the alternative of waiting uncertain and exposed seemed far worse. However, others believed that this approach was reckless. They pointed to humanity's history of self-destruction, wars fought not for survival but for dominance. They worried that the instinct to conquer might have been observed and misinterpreted by the aliens. If Earth acted on fear, they feared, they could be perceived as the aggressors they had long believed themselves to be. Perhaps, they argued, the aliens had withdrawn because they saw humanity not as something to be conquered, but as something far more dangerous, something that might conquer itself. At the heart of these debates was a growing realization the aliens had shaken humanity's foundation. No longer could they cling to the belief that they were merely survivors. The question of who they truly were had become far more complicated. Were they predators, as the aliens seemed to believe? Or could they prove otherwise? The silence of the aliens was deafening, but it wasn't the silence that terrified humanity most. It was the growing awareness that silence might one day be broken by something far worse than they could ever imagine. As the months stretched into years, humanity found itself consumed by uncertainty. The alien presence remained distant, but no less oppressive. They had withdrawn, their ships now little more than distant specks in the vastness of space. Yet their silence lingered, filling every corner of human existence with a growing sense of dread. Reports from the edges of Earth's consciousness revealed that the alien vessels had not left. They remained, distant but ever present, watching from beyond the boundaries of human detection. Satellite surveillance and deep space probes detected faint signals that suggested the aliens were still observing, collecting data, and assessing. Though they had disappeared from view, their influence seemed to grow stronger with each passing day. Humanity, once confident in their technological progress, found themselves staring into the abyss of their own vulnerability. The aliens' departure had not been a victory, it had only heightened their sense of isolation. They weren't being hunted or engaged in any visible way, yet they remained firmly entrenched in a state of uncertainty, unable to determine what, if anything, the aliens were waiting for. Theories emerged, each one more terrifying than the last. Some believed the aliens had deemed humanity too dangerous and were preparing a means to ensure they would never rise to a threat. Others feared they were simply waiting for humanity to self-destruct, waiting to step in and assume control when they were weak enough to be dominated. Meanwhile, within Earth's government and military ranks, there was growing debate over what action, if any, they should take. Should they attempt to initiate contact once more, hoping for some form of understanding? Or should they prepare for an inevitable conflict that they feared would come too late to prevent? In the years since the alien vessels disappeared from the horizon, humanity had grown more divided. Some factions called for peace, for the chance to coexist or at least communicate with the aliens, while others urged preparation for war. The belief that the aliens had viewed humanity as predators had become a dangerous obsession. The very idea of being perceived as such had turned their society inward, consumed by doubt and suspicion. The scientists, once hopeful, now spoke in whispers. They had spent countless hours trying to understand what the aliens had seen in them, what had led the advanced civilizations of the galaxy to view humanity not as innocents, but as something far more dangerous. They delved into humanity's darkest histories, the wars and conquests, tracing the very instincts that had allowed them to survive, but had also made them seem so threatening. The military, meanwhile, had begun preparations for any possibility. They strengthened defenses, developed new weapons, and sought to outmaneuver what they now saw as a potential threat. Their confidence in humanity's place in the universe had been shattered. They were no longer the hopeful explorers of space. Instead, they had become paranoid, obsessed with what the aliens might do if they returned. But even the military could not ignore the possibility that the aliens might never come back. If they had been observing, waiting for humanity to show its true colors, what if they had decided humanity wasn't worth the effort? What if they had already judged humanity as beyond saving, beyond redemption? The thought was unbearable, but it lingered like a specter in every mind. As the years passed, the silence from the stars became deafening. Humanity no longer knew if they were the predators the aliens had feared or the prey they had long believed themselves to be. The truth remained elusive, hidden behind the void of space and the silence of the stars. What was certain was that humanity could no longer return to the innocence they had once cherished. The moment the aliens saw them as predators, their fate had changed forever. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Sci-Fi Horizons stories for more thrilling tales of science fiction and adventure.